If I can have everybody's attention, please. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. We welcome you to the 2017 CSA and ASPPPO Meet the Candidates Forum. My name is Amanda Sutcliffe-Jones. I am the CSA Director of Communications. We want to cover some housekeeping items before we begin. I will move the slide over to our agenda. We are welcomed not only by a full room of property owners, but we also have those joining us via webinar. Thank you for joining us via computer, cell phone, tablet, iPad, for those of us who are joining on the webinar. We originally had 125 signed up, but I think we're having a couple more people joining as we get started here. So again, please be aware that we are filming. The candidates, as well as your moderator and myself, will address you from the podium, so that way everybody can hear the audio that comes through the line, so they will only be speaking from the podium. And we are running a webcam service. Our webcam's running from over here. We are separately running this video as well. That will be filmed and produced via our website. So that will be published by November 3rd, and we will expedite that process as quickly as possible. A few housekeeping items. If I can ask you to turn your cell phones off, just as a courtesy to the presenters and to the candidates, I certainly would appreciate it. We have a few fire exits in this building. You can see one over here to your right. The other one is over here to your left. So please be aware of the fire exits. And then we do have bathrooms located in the center of the room, male and female restrooms. I'm going to cover some agenda items. We will hear from Barry Barth. Barry Barth is our moderator for this afternoon's presentation. He will cover the forum process. We will hear individually from each of our candidates who will address introductions as well as candidate statements. I will return to the podium to go over some election process reminders, and then we will conclude the forum. So let me introduce the rest of our presenters this afternoon. In terms of logistics, I've introduced myself. Barry Barth is a CSA and ASPPPO board member. He's also a member of the nominating committee. He serves as our moderator for this afternoon's meeting. Beverly Barth is seated right up front. Beverly is our, I'm sorry, my apologies. Beverly Barth. Barbara, don't take that to heart wherever you are. Sorry, Barbara. Beverly Serrell. Beverly Serrell is a board member as well, and she will be our timekeeper for this afternoon's meeting. The forms that she has in her hand will indicate a 1-minute mark, a 30-second mark, and then 0 time remaining. So she will show that to the candidates to indicate that their time is coming short and or elapsing, and then we will ask them to conclude their specific presentation and then move on to the next candidate. Barry Barth will now join us, and we will hear a word from our moderator, Barry.
Thanks, Amanda. We have a lot to accomplish in the next 2 hours, as you can tell, with 11 candidates, and we'll be very efficient. Our 11 board candidates are seated by name in alphabetical order. And here are the guidelines. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to complete their introductions. Each candidate will then have 6 minutes to speak on the topic of their choice. The candidates will be randomly selected to make their presentations, and we will have an audience member draw names out of a hat. And we'll do that both for the 3-minute section and also for the 6-minute section. Our timekeeper, Beverly Serrell, will flag when there is 1 minute remaining and when there is 30 seconds. And either I will or Amanda will announce to the candidate when their time is up. Questions for the board candidates were previously collected from the community and were due by September 28th in order for the candidates to address the questions. And I'm sure a number of you have gone on the website and seen all the work the candidates have done. 61 questions were submitted, and those questions were grouped into 6 categories: personal, general, finance, revenue, gate, governance, and referendum. Each candidate's responses to those questions have been posted on our website, cpinesliving.com/elections. Because questions from the community have already been addressed, there will be no questions from the floor or from folks on the webinar. Candidates may remain after the forum to answer individual questions, but these activities will not be videotaped or made part of the forum. This event is being videotaped and will be posted in a few days on the CPINE's website. In order to give our candidates their due, please refrain from applause except for giving them a hand right now. I will also add what I said to the candidates before when we did a little walkthrough. I'm really impressed with the amount of work that went into preparing for this event from these candidates. Those of you that have been on the website and seen all the work that they've done, it's really amazing. And I really thank them for stepping up, in order to help serve our community. So let's get started with our first candidate. Go ahead.
We'd like to welcome Daniel Westerbeck to the podium, please. And Mr. Westerbeck is running for the ASPPPO Board of Directors. Dan.
This is the first. The guy with the W starts off the presentation. I'm not going to say a lot about my bio. It's all in the pamphlet. I've served on the board several years already. I was Vice President General Tax Counsel of the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad. In that capacity, I advised the corporate board on how it should conduct transactions involving finances and shareholders. I was involved in more than $13 billion worth of such transactions and financings. So I know how corporate boards should operate. They are fiduciaries for their stakeholders. That's to be held to the highest standard of honor, integrity, and transparency. There's no difference in that corporate board and how our board should perform at CSA and ASPPPO. That goes without saying. As my literature indicates, I opposed the term sheet. I didn't think it was a fair enough deal for the property owners. ASPPPO's bylaws themselves require that ASPPPO represent all property owners, not just those that live in certain neighborhoods, not just those who are not affected by a right of first refusal, not just some of you, everybody. And ASPPPO is also to provide a forum for property owners to exchange views and communicate. This is one forum. Town halls are other forums. Newsletters a forum. But we're in the internet age. Website's a forum for ASPPPO now. ASPPPO needs its own website. I'm not going to bore you with a lot of other stuff. Read the materials, read the answers to the questions. You know where I stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Our next candidate will be Sharon Lowe. Sharon is running for the CSA Board of Directors. Sharon, please come to the podium.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sharon, as Amanda said, and I'm running for CSA. I just want to point out that I am walking with a cane right now. 6 weeks ago, I had knee replacement surgery, and when I was speaking with my surgeon about when it was going to be, I told him that I had to be in Hilton Head on this particular day, and we scheduled the surgery so that I could be here. And I did my physical therapy so that I could be here with you guys today. Again, I'm like Dan, I'm not going to say what I've written in my bio. You can read that pretty easily. But what I think a bio doesn't really tell you is kind of the meat of what people do. It says who we were, what our titles were. It doesn't really say why we did what we did and what we accomplished while we were there, other than sometimes some numbers. But in my work as a government auditor, I spent my career helping multitudes of federal agencies look at their operations and making suggestions for the improvement. I even had the opportunity to work with the Congress to help draft and write legislation that would, in the case of when I was there, would help to resolve the savings and loan crisis of the 1980s, if anyone remembers that back then. Those are the kinds of responsibilities and work that I've done that I want to bring here. I bring it to other nonprofit organizations where I volunteer, and I'd like to bring that here, and I certainly hope you all will consider me and vote for me when the time comes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sharon. We are having an audience member randomly select our next candidate, and that candidate will be Mr. James J.R. Richardson. J.R., if you could come to the podium, please. J.R. is running for the CSA and ASPPPO Board of Directors.
Good afternoon. How are y'all? I'm J.R. Richardson. Everybody calls me J.R. because when I worked for CPANS in 1970, and those days there were 8 gyms in the office, and we started calling each other by our initials or some other name. So it was kind of interesting around there when we were helping developing the CPANS community. I have a pretty broad background in community development. I've built 3 or 4 communities myself, and I've been involved in at least 9 others that were in with Charles and others. And it was just a wonderful learning experience when I was coming along, and it enabled me, my experience with Charles enabled me to be able to be the developer that I am. I make a lot less money when I do it because I do it too nice. And so it's a lot more fun doing it when you drive by it later and say, God, I did that, and it was really a nice place. So we have a lot of good thoughts about good development, and one of the reasons that I'm presently on the CFINS, the CSA board and ASPPPO board is to help our community be better. And with that, I'll relinquish much of my time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, J.R. Our next randomly selected candidate will be Mr. Christopher Cliff. Christopher, if you could approach the podium. Christopher is running for the ASPPPO Board of Directors. Christopher.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here, and thank you to the property owners that have tuned in to the webinar. I'm Christopher Cliff, and this is my first experience of electioneering. I'd like to mention some thank yous to Patricia, my partner and wife of approximately 50 years, for encouraging me to stand for the election, to the over 130 property owners who signed a petition to get me on the ballot, to Alliance for CPIN's Future for their support and endorsement, and I'd like to thank CSA for all their hard work in setting up this election and setting up these meetings. I don't intend to repeat the statements and opinions I've expressed and which are published on the websites, but I would like to add that much of my career was spent gaining the maximum for the shareholder or the stockholder, for the minimum outlay. And in this respect, recently, the resort negotiators have done a great job, in my opinion. Also, for 30 years, the resort and its previous owner and the commercial entities have protected their interests very successfully. But I think it's time for a change. We property owners should emphasize to the resort, to the commercial entities, that we want their business models to succeed. We will continue to golf, we'll continue to dine, we'll continue to shop, and we'll continue to volunteer for the PGA tournament. But it's time for a change. They need to share more of the burden of supporting an aging infrastructure in the plantation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christopher. Our next candidate to speak is is being randomly selected, and that person will be Mr. Richard Spear. Rich, if you could approach the podium, please. Rich Spear is running for the ASPPPO and CSA Board of Directors. Rich.
Good afternoon. My mother's on the webinar, so I am going to have to do a few background things. She's 97. I was born in Canada. I was raised in a town called Selma, Alabama. I was there and went over the bridge in '65, so I would be the one Democrat in Hilton Head that I'm aware of. I went to Georgia Tech as a nuclear physics major. I immediately became an engineer. I worked as on the advisory board for Georgia Tech now, and I was in the I'm a letterman for Georgia Tech and remain active involved there as well. I worked for a number of regional banks, and then I was in charge of strategic planning for American Express. And then for 35 years, I ran a management consulting company working with financial institutions around the world. And in terms of transactions, I've been involved in over 1,000 transactions, well over $1 trillion worth of values. Acquisitions and mergers. When Bank A bought Bank B, we would typically be the consultant in putting it together. When Norwest bought Wells Fargo, for example. I also currently serve as past chairman of the Art Center. I'm on the Junior Jazz Foundation. As a result of those activities, I've been involved with a lot of things outside the gate. Like many of you, I chose to come to Hilton Head in 1998 full-time. I started coming in 1970 when I was given a free vacation. And at 21, free was a good number. But like you, it was the balance of life between what I had here in lifestyle and Sea Pines in particular and in the resort community. And since 1998, I've enjoyed that. I worked here full-time till I retired basically about 9 years ago. The benefits of what has been invested over the last several years by Riverstone has impacted the quality, and that's offset a little bit by the fact that we have been unable to invest in the infrastructure of Sea Pines for a number of reasons. So that's mine. I'll save my comments for later. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Our next candidate is being randomly selected by a member of the audience. And that would be Mr. Kerry DeVillette. Kerry, if you would please approach the podium. Kerry is running for the CSA Board of Directors. Kerry.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I am Kerry DeVillette. Let me begin by first extending my thanks and gratitude to the boards of the CSA and ASPPPO, our moderator, and to the staff that brought this event together. And also to all of you in attendance today, those attending the webinar, and for those folks that will be attending and seeing this later on. I appreciate your investing your time in our future. I'd also like to thank all of the current board members of the ASPPPO and CSA for their service. Many spend countless and thankless hours on behalf of Sea Pines. And I say this as an executive board member of the largest homeowners association in the state of Georgia. I understand how it can often be a tiring and thankless experience. So thank you for your service, and I genuinely mean that. I'm a native of New Orleans. I'm a graduate of the University of Tennessee, and I currently reside in Dunwoody, Georgia. It's a northern suburb of Atlanta of about 50,000 residents. My wife, Jill, is here today, and I bought our home here in Sea Pines in 2008. We spend about 10 to 12 weeks a year here, and we hope to make this our full-time residence in about 3 years if things go to plan. Throughout my 40-year career in healthcare and information technology, I've held chief marketing and sales positions in Fortune 500 companies and had several successful startups. I've run business units with top-line revenue over $1 billion, and I've had more than 100 people rolling up to me in those business units. Today, I'm the principal and managing partner of the CSA Abbott Group, a consulting firm in the healthcare information and technology market. In addition, along with Jill, We have a boutique property management company here in Sea Pines, and we manage a handful of homes in Sea Pines. I'm not a newcomer to community service. I'm a board member of the Dunwoody Homeowners Association since 1987. I served as president for a number of years and continue to serve to this day as an executive board director. I also serve on the City of Dunwoody and the Urban Redevelopment Agency, a board position to which I was unanimously appointed by the mayor and city council. I served as co-chair and vice chair of the agency from 2013 to 2016. For more detailed information about my professional and civic experience, I'll refer you to my profile on Sea Pines Living website, where I included embedded links to the various websites credentialing my background. Why am I running? Having choices and the ability to add diversity of relevant experience to a board makes it a better and stronger board. My 30 years with the DHA has taught me the value of listening to my constituents and that you are there to represent the homeowner. I've immersed myself in the bylaws, the covenants, and gate fee policies. I've created models of current revenue sources as well as areas of potential revenue leakage. Charts and graphs of which are included in the 61 questions that were presented to the candidates. I believe you will see that I'm ready from day one. Your time has elapsed. Thank you, and I ask you for your vote.
Thank you very much, Carrie. Our next candidate is being randomly selected by a member of our audience. And that candidate will be William Bill Johnson. Bill, if you could approach the podium, please. Bill is running for the ASPPPO and CSA Board of Directors. Bill.
Good afternoon. My wife of over 40 years, I married her when she was 12. She told me to tell you that. It's back there. We're fortunate to have owned our home here in Sea Pines for almost 14 years, but I wasn't lucky enough to have a career here. My career was primarily spent in Kansas City, where we owned and operated radio stations. Well, owning these stations taught me the need to understand the public's interest and also the needs of the community. This experience made me a more strategically minded entrepreneur, understanding how to facilitate delivering effective results while bringing diverse stakeholders to consensus. In addition to my business involvement, my civic community was multifaceted. I chaired the Port Authority of Kansas City. I served on the Executive Board of Directors for the Economic Development Corporation, and I was a very active member of the board on the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation. Now, here we are in Sea Pines. Loving it here, stimulated by the people with diverse interest. These past few years, I prepared myself to be the best possible candidate that you could vote for to serve both on the CSA and ASPPPO boards. I was asked if the Alliance for Sea Pines Future was going to support me. I said, this group says, well, here, you've probably seen this. Many of you received this. It said, the future of Sea Pines depends on us. Really? I hope not. My critics have been sitting on the sidelines while I got involved, learning what issues we as a community face and how we can effectively overcome these challenges. Working with the confines, and believe me, there are many of the restrictive covenants. Ask these other candidates, how many committees have you served on? How many task forces? Have you ever applied to serve? And you're going to get a response that is going to show you how little they prepared to serve you. I've committed hundreds of hours in preparation to run for these boards. No other candidate on the slate has committed to this work. We need the leadership and stewardship experience, which I have, to meet these challenges. We need the experiences that I've acquired to be an informed board member that can hit the ground running. Your responsibility is to vote for the best candidate. You'll recognize after this meeting that I'm the guy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill. Our next candidate to speak is being randomly selected by a member of the audience. And our next candidate that we will welcome to the podium will be Dana Avocott. Dana, if you would approach the podium, please. Dana is running for the ASPPPO Board of Directors. Dana.
Good afternoon. My name is Dana Advocate, and I'm running for a seat on the ASPPPO board and only the ASPPPO board. I'm a native Cincinnatian, and I've been married to Diederik for 34 years. We bought our home in Heritage Woods in 2012, but we have been coming to Sea Pines vacationing for many years, and I've come to Hilton Head since I've been a girl. My career spanned 17 years in New York City, first in technology and then in communications. I began working in the software industry, basically developing software for publishing and advertising agencies. That required so much communication or skills in communication that I ended up moving to corporate communications full time. I served clients such as IBM, Anderson Consulting, American Express, and DuPont, handling things like crisis communications, corporate strategy, financial issues. And I bring those skills to Sea Pines and to your board. In 1977, we moved to London, where I worked in the not-for-profit industry. So I also have served in a place where you give of your time freely. So my second career is in real estate here on the island, working for Keller Williams. I would like to put my communications and technology skills to work at ASPPPO. ASPPPO is the only organization that represents Sea Pines homeowners, but yet the membership has been declining for about 5 years. It's an organization that communicates really only twice a year, once when it sends a bill and once when a 3x5 folder telling you what it does. I think it needs to be much more service-oriented and relevant to our community, offering information, resources, and things that homeowners need. Our new full-time residents would like to learn about volunteer opportunities, where to get services. Second homeowners need to have the same resources that we as locals know, builders, architects, where you can get things done. After Hurricane Matthew, we saw no fewer than 5 websites spring up offering this kind of information, and yet nothing from our own POA. This information, by the way, is available at other websites in other gated communities in Hilton Head. So I would like to enable us to have a website that could get you, the homeowner, this kind of information. Communications and technology are what would help do that. I'd like you to get to the end of next year and say that the $35 that you spent on ASPPPO was the best $35 you've spent in Sea Pines. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dana. Our next presenter is being randomly selected by a member of the audience. And our next candidate to speak will be Mr. Mark Piegza. Mark, if you could approach the podium, please. Mark is running for the ASPPPO and CSA Board of Directors. Mark.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you to my fellow property owners here in attendance and on the webcam, and those of whom will watch the video at a later date. As Amanda said, my name is Mark Piegza. I've been married for 22 years to my wonderful wife, Lisa, who's in the 4th row over there. We moved to Sea Pines this summer from New Jersey, so we're relative newcomers. We have 2 children. Our daughter, Alexandra, is a sophomore at the University of South Carolina, and our son Charlie is an 8th grader who's attending Hilton Head Prep and is training at Smith Stearns Tennis Academy. We've been vacationing as a family in Sea Pines the past 5 years, and we originally started coming down here because of Smith Stearns. In our many visits here, we fell in love with the community. We attended many different places around the country, multiple different tennis academies in different areas, and we found that Sea Pines was a very unique and wonderful place, and that's why we decided to relocate here permanently. In my professional career, I run 2 businesses. I'm the president of a company called Convergence Advisors, a company I founded 10 years ago that provides advisory services to companies in the telecom, media, and tech spaces. I'm also co-founder, CFO, and board member of US Space. US Space is a company which provides satellite services to commercial and government customers around the world. Prior to starting my own businesses, I spent 20 years as a career investment banker in both New York and Hong Kong. During my business career, I've sat on multiple boards of directors, and I understand how to work towards consensus decisions for the benefit of an organization. I have an MBA from the Wharton School, University of Pennsylvania, and a BS in finance from the University of Illinois. I realize there are multiple talented and qualified candidates from which you can choose for these board positions. I believe I can bring a fresh perspective to the boards of ASPPO and CSA. I welcome a dialogue with you as fellow property owners and I'm always open to suggestions. And lastly, I very much appreciate your consideration and your vote next month. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Our next candidate's being selected from a member of the audience. And that candidate will be Mr. Stu Rodman. Stu, if you could approach the podium. Stu is running for the CSA Board of Directors. Stu.
Good afternoon. It's been my distinct honor and high privilege to represent you all on Beaufort County, both school board and county council, for going on 13 years now. It's hard to believe. And I think perhaps that might be the best thing. If you like what I've done, then you have a sense of what I might be able to bring to the party here. And you have my bio in front of you. You also have a list of a couple of the things that I think I played a lead role in making happen for the county that were very significant for Sea Pines and for us. I'll just touch on those briefly. It's very seldom I ever use the word I because most things are, in fact, team efforts. But I do think these are ones that would not have happened the way they did without my involvement. 8 years ago, 9 years ago, we had a tremendous dispute on the island between whether we were going to expand the airport or leave it the way it was. And we basically today, well, I brokered the deal so that we would actually limit the expansion to what was on the airport property, and so both sides bought into that agreement. Today, we're approaching the end of the completion of the runway, and I would guess 6 to 9 months from now, you will probably see Delta, United, and American operating 2 to 3 flights a day to each of their hubs, plus probably LaGuardia and National. I suggested to the town that we really needed to stand up the circle-to-circle task force. Great deal of concern about the circle capacity, and what came out of that is that if we run out of capacity, the alternatives to fix that and do something else are all very undesirable. And so we need to actually do that very well. And I've talked to CSA, and we need to get another outside expert hired by CSA to look at that to see that if it really works. Biggest problem we have today on the island is getting the people here traffic-wise. And I met with DOT about 5 months ago. They made a commitment to work on that problem. Above the fold yesterday was the first part of that, where they're looking at doing the retiming the traffic signals. And then lastly, 6 months ago, the feds were getting ready to replace one of the bridges. The other bridges are exceeding their capacity, and we really need to replace all of it. There's earthquake issues. And so at this point in time, over the last 6 months, County Council is standing up a tax referendum that would replace all 4 bridges.
Your time has elapsed.
So thank you very much. It's been my pleasure to serve you.
Thank you very much, Stu. Our next candidate, I'm sorry, what was the question? You are up, yes. Our next candidate to approach the podium will be Thomas McPhillips. Mr. McPhillips is running for the ASPPPO Board of Directors. Tom?
You know, in marketing, they say repetition, repetitions. I wanted to hear Barry say my name. So,
Thomas McPhillips.
Yes. There you go. Thank you, Barry. So my name is actually Thomas Moore McPhillips, which only my mother called me Thomas Moore, and I knew what that meant. So I am going to go a little bit into the bio because I feel it's very important that you learn more about me, about who I've been and where I've been in my life, because I think it's important to whomever you elect, you learn to trust that individual. And so that hopefully that trust will start here. I was born in Pittsburgh. In 1975, I left for the Naval Academy at 17 years of age. I graduated 4 years later. I have the Naval Academy to thank for a lot of things that's happened to me in my life, along with my family. But I also have to thank, because that's where I met my wife, who graduated there in 1982 in the second class of women. I was in the last class of males that was there. I went on to become a helicopter pilot in the Navy. I flew in various parts of the world, from Thailand to the European theater to the Caribbean Sea. I'm a retired naval officer, 20 years of service, 7 active duty, 13 in the reserves. After leaving the Navy, which was just an incredible learning opportunity for me, I had to get work done with people from all parts of this country. It's not comfortable for me up here speaking right now because I'm not used to using the word I. We always use us, we, team. I joined Pfizer Inc. I rose to the level of vice president there. I won't bore you with those details. Just to tell you, I had an extremely large budget and a number of people working for me to accomplish objectives with customers. Large corporations that are awfully difficult to work with sometimes. But we accomplished it, made our way through mergers successfully, and I left happy, leaving a team behind of well-trained and developed people. I want to thank all of you for coming today. My wife and I are full-time residents here. We've been coming here since 1983. We owned a lot, then we owned a condo. We rented that condo through Sea Pines Resort. Quit doing that after a while because we spent so much time here, and now we're here full-time. Live over in Gunny Road. You're welcome to stop by anytime. And thank you very much for your time today and for showing up. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Thomas. We will now have our moderator, Barry Barth, come to the podium.
I would suggest we give all our candidates a hand. Everything. I think they all did a great job, and I know how much, having done this 2 years ago myself, how this feels at this moment. And I think all of you should feel very good about your performance. We're now going to shift to the second portion with our candidates. They will each have 6 minutes on a topic of their own choice, obviously related to this. Let's not get into politics or anything like that. So. Thank you very much, and Amanda will end up drawing our first name.
Okay, so we've had a member of the audience randomly select, and our first candidate that will present their candidate statement will be J.R. Richardson. J.R., could you address the podium, please? J.R. is running for the CSA and ASPPPO Board of Directors.
Thank you very much. I will say that if you think my face is red, it's always red. And it's so red that my middle son's call sign on his mobile phone is Chief Very Red is calling. So, it's just that way. I'm just going to go through some of the things that I've experienced and think about our community and for the other years, because I've lived here for over 60 years. I moved here when I was 11. There were 5 white families and about 200 blacks in the community, and it was a wonderful community. And we were just happy to be here. My father started the first retail business on Hilton, which was Forest Beach Supermarket, which was 100 by 100 down at Coligny. My parents collected $5 a day some days, or Dad started hammering nails in the afternoon for one of the builders, and it was Mother stayed in. One day Charles walks in and says, I want to buy some groceries. And so he commenced to fill 4 carts of groceries up, and they instantly became best friends. So, and then not long after that, my mother became his first employee. So it's been a fun time to be able to know him and have the experience of being part of the development of Sea Pines. 45 of these years I've lived in Sea Pines. Before that I lived down on Bayberry Lane on the ocean. That's where I grew up. And I was telling someone earlier that the road was paved to Coligny Circle, but it wasn't paved to North and Forest Beach. And all of a sudden, it would rain and it would be, you couldn't get to the house. So you had to go out on the beach, go down in your car and park you up in the dunes to get home, which is one of those things. So, but I've been part of the development process since it began. It's also been my life's work as a result of it. And I think I can make a meaningful difference because I have institutional memory about how things go. I'm presently on the board and enjoying serving. As Sea Pines was being developed, I was a student of Charles's. I was actually the closest male person to him, so he taught me how to hunt, fish, sail boats. He gave me all that opportunity. It's just been a wonderful time. And he taught me how to build communities the way he thought that they should be built. My mother was Charles Frazier's first employee, as I've said, and after returning from Vietnam, I too spent a lot of time in those choppers, by the way. I went to work for Charles as his special assistant with the Sea Pines company. I feel our little jewel of Sea Pines needs polishing, and I think that in these last 3 years we've been beginning that process. We did have the little interruption with a guy named Matthew and Irma. I guess she's a girl or a guy, I'm not quite sure. But anyway, fortunately Irma didn't get us as bad as Matthew did. So being in the maintenance part of the community, I've been working on getting the community back in service with, by the way, a great crew. The people who work here in this company for CSA are incredible, and they're the most intelligent, the most prepared people that have been working in Sea Pines since the company gave its rights up. So I would love to give them a hand at any time. Charles Frazier in building Sea Pines started modern day development as you know it. It's been there for 60 years, but there've been several ownerships since then, and it needs renewing, and it needs a lot of tender loving care. And I'm passionate about the beautiful community, and I think we can make a difference in that process, one that benefits all of us. I would like to serve on the board because I believe I bring institutional memory and historical knowledge to Sea Pines Plantation and continue to work, and I've been doing so the last 3 years, both on the ARB and the MEMP, which is major improvements. I'm an active listener. I like to get to the facts, and I make decisions based on the facts. I enjoy working with a team environment, and will continue to work with my responsibilities. One of my skills is building communities. Over the last 40 years, I have been involved in making multiple communities involving Windmill Harbor, Westbury Park, Amelia Island, Palmas Del Mar, Big Canoe in Atlanta, many others that we worked in. I also teach a class at Clemson University graduate program in community development, in which, by the way, my son is in there right now, he's about to graduate, in which I instill the values that I've learned from Charles, the man that started it all, and is responsible for us all being here. For over 13 years, I've volunteered for certain things with Sea Pines. As to the future, I think that anger and resentment should not be the governing philosophy of how we change things. I think you have to do teamwork to do that. And there seems to be a lot of anger and resentment apparently at the present time. I like working together to solve problems with real facts, and the way we should all conduct ourselves should be with integrity. Past governing bodies have pushed things down the road. They've done some things, but haven't done specifically the things they needed to do. And this particular board is moving forward with things that are hard calls, hard decisions, hard things that have to be done. So this leadership has taken on the difficult issues and working to find solutions. Some of these decisions are critical to our future. Some are out of our board's control. Some of the issues will not be what everyone wants, but given the ownership and the rights of various stakeholders, there will be compromise. Am I finished, you say?
Time has elapsed.
Well, hell. Anyway. Hello, everybody. Well, I didn't get to say everything I wanted to, but I would just say, can I have 1 second? Okay.
Your time has
elapsed. In that case, thank you for your vote.
Thank you, JR. The next candidate has been randomly selected by a member of our audience, and that will be Sharon Lowe. Sharon is running for the CSA Board of Directors. Sharon, please come to the podium.
I don't know, I'm detecting a pattern. I was second the last time and second this time. Let's hope my technology works for me. Just quickly for a second, thank you. Yep, thanks a lot, technology. So 6 minutes, when I learned that we needed to talk about something for 6 minutes, I first want to thank Amanda for saying that we needed to talk about something that was relevant to the election, because my first thought as an educator at the aquarium in New England was to talk to you all about the importance of horseshoe crabs. But instead, you'll have to see me afterwards if you want to learn about them. So one of the things we do as educators at the aquarium, we give lots of presentations, and all of our presentations have to be framed. We have to have a framework that kind of draws our presentation together. And so as I was thinking about what do I want my framework to be when we talk about what's going on in sea pines, I kept coming back to what does it really take to be a 5-star community and a 5-star resort? So by way of background, my family has been vacationing on Hilton Head for well over 25 years. We spent a lot of time in Sea Pine. We spent a lot of times in other plantations. And when it came time to buy, there was only one place that I would call home, and that was Sea Pines. And for us, my husband and I, we don't golf. We don't play tennis. But what we did love about Sea Pines was its beaches. We loved the paths throughout the community. We loved the feel of the community, that everywhere you went, everything went together. And we loved the stables, the farms, and the forest preserve. Now, I know that there are a bunch of you out there who do play tennis, and I know there are probably even more that play golf. So the amenities that Riverstone has improved and expanded, and they've done a fabulous job, they're really important to you, and I totally understand that. But we need both of those to be a 5-star community. We need all of those aspects. So when Riverstone announced its plans to expand the Inn by 90 rooms, from 60 rooms to 150, one of its big selling points was that we wanted to be a 5-star inn. And they talked about some unspecified other improvements that they were going to make. Well, bigger inn and some infrastructure improvements don't make a 5-star resort. And in particular, within Sea Pines, they can't be a 5-star inn unless we have a 5-star community to go along with them. So that got me thinking, do we have a 5-star community here at Sea Pines? And I have to tell you, my answer right now is not quite yet, but I think we'll get there. There are a couple of factors that I think we need to look at to get us there. I'm going to talk about them in no particular order because I don't necessarily, what's important to one person is going to be not as important to another person. So let's talk about the gate. It's always coming up, whether it's on Facebook or face-to-face discussions. We've got to deal with our day visitors. We have to deal with how much do we charge to come into our community. We have to deal with our property owners who rightfully want to have easy access to our homes, and yet we find difficulties when we come in the gate, especially during prime season in the summer or around Heritage. So just some thoughts that I have. And we need to change the way we sell passes. Right now we sell them at the gate. Our security guards, I think, spend more time selling passes than they do making sure that our community is safe, and we need to change that. We need to sell them online. We need to sell them at the Welcome Center. But we don't need to sell them at the gate. We also need to think about raising that fee, and I know we tried this year. And I know there are those that say that there are a lot of stumbling blocks to get us to those increases. But I think we can get there, and I think we can do that by working together with our commercial neighbors, especially the Sea Pine Center, and making sure that the easement that it was granted to allow people rightful access to Sea Pines Center by road or by bike are addressed. And we can still raise the fee for other people, but we can keep and make sure that people still can get to Sea Pines Center and spend their money and help our community and our neighbors. Secondly, I think we need to address infrastructure issues, including our roads, paths, and drainage systems. We need to identify the costs, and I know there's been a lot of work going on that, and we need to find fair ways to handle those costs. And lastly, I want to say that we need to work with Riverstone. We need to work with them to expand the inn and to address several issues that some of us think need to be addressed. But it's important that as their expansion goes, that they remember that they are part of an overall community, and that community includes the property owners, commercial interests, and the resort itself. Thanks, and I hope you'll vote in this election, and I hope you'll vote for me.
Thank you, Sharon. Our next candidate to speak has been randomly selected by a member of the audience, and that candidate is Daniel Westerbeck. Dan, if you would approach the podium, please. Dan is running for the ASPPPO Board of Directors. Dan.
Hi. I'm not going to, again, reiterate much of what the material says that's in the brochures, but I want to talk a little bit about the ASPPPO board processes and the substance of some of the issues we considered this past year. I think we've been wrong. We've been off course, and they need to be fixed. Let's take, for example, the question I've encountered most frequently is why was the voting standard for ASPPPO members lowered to 66%? When we'd been told it would be 75%. There was a legal opinion issued in July 17 of this year, which was introduced at the board meeting in September, which justified that. But there was also a legal opinion of April 3rd that said 75% was the proper standard. In fact, I'll quote it. Attached is the memo from Justin Hoyle, an associate in our corporate practice group. This is from Nexon Pruitt, who are ASPPPO's counsel in this matter. The bottom line is we believe it would be prudent to submit the amendments to the 1984 settlement agreement and the 1984 and 1974 covenants to a majority vote of the board, everybody agreed on that, and a referendum type vote, 75% approval needed for those votes of those voting of the ASPPPO members. So our lawyers told us 75% was the standard, and there was an attached memorandum by an associate that justified that. There was also a standard identified under corporate law, state law, which was an alternative of 66% as contained in the statute. So that was the issue that was before the board. The next action the board took, to the best of my knowledge, was the June 22 resolution, which says 66% would be the voting standard. And or 50% of those voting of the membership, whichever is less. How did that happen? I don't know. Had all the board members been apprised of the April 3rd opinion? I don't know. Had they all read that opinion? I don't know. Why did they choose 66% instead of 75% as the pass rate for the most important referendum we've ever conducted in our lifetime here? I don't know. So we roll forward to the September meeting of the board, and the July 17 memo from Nexon Pruitt is produced, which justifies a 66% voting standard for an ASPPPO member vote on a change to the covenants. The memorandum, if you read it, it's public now, as will be the April 3rd memo, relies on the speculative value of the hotel settlement agreement. How much is the right worth to build or expand the inn at Harbortown? And I'll read the concluding paragraph of that memo because I think it's somewhat ominous. Nexon Pruitt says, we do not believe there is a clear-cut answer as to whether a vote of the ASPPPO members is necessary or if the board can approve the amendment of the hotel settlement agreement without some type of membership vote. However, we have recommended that the most prudent thing for ASPPPO to do would be to vote of the membership as provided for in the South Carolina Nonprofit Corporation Act, which is the 66% standard. So why did we move to a 66% standard from 75% when had been advised the most prudent thing to do was 75% initially? I moved to replace that standard with the 75% standard as contained in the covenants and as first advised by council. Dick Matthews joined me in that motion. That was defeated 7-2 by the other members of the board. You need to know that, including several of the incumbents up here who voted that way. So the board process itself in dealing with an issue this significant has been difficult for all of us. There are a lot of difficult issues. I don't question the good faith of the members having their views, but frankly, I don't see any point in lowering the voting standard for a significant transaction like this, which affects all of our property values and quality of life going forward. I thought that was wrong. I still think it's wrong. I think the board process itself, as it's now constituted, is not transparent. It's flawed. It's not clear that all directors have all of the information necessary at each meeting to make informed judgments. And it's not clear why the riskier standard was ultimately adopted in the resolution. So I will continue to work to see that 75% is what the voting hurdle will be if there is to be any kind of referendum. That's just process. On the substantive issues of the term sheet itself, and that's what this election is all really about, this is a straw man poll on whether you like the deal that was on the table or whether you don't. The negotiators for both sides, but especially for ASPPPO, consistently overlooked the big property owner issues that were brought to our attention time and again and ignored. Started with tee times. The golfers didn't like it. Tee times came off the table. Right of first refusal, impacting Fairway One villas, impacting Harbor Town residents. Still up in the air. The veto power of the resort. Never could get a committed answer as to when they would exercise it, when they wouldn't. Lawton Stables, that blew up in everybody's face. So the bottom line is, we have not done a very good job of listening to the community and advocating your views when you've made them known to us. And many times our members of our board have pushed back and rejected your opinions. I don't like that, don't think that's fair, don't think that's the way a board should run. You need to re-elect me to keep fighting for you and some new people on the board. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you very much, Dan. The next candidate that has been randomly selected by a member of our audience is Thomas McPhillips. Tom, if you could approach the podium, please. Tom is running for the ASPPPO Board of Directors. Tom?
I'm sure like many of you, in 1983 when my wife and I first visited here, and subsequently we really fell in love with Sea Pines. Its natural setting, the amenities, the way the homes are built right into the scenery itself, the beautiful beaches. My first commitment is that it needs to stay that way. That said, change is important here too. We need to continue to improve, not only for ourselves, our community, we need to improve our appearance, our operations. I am not a member of the Alliance. I am not a member of the group you received a letter from supporting the Sea Pines Resort. I am independent, and I hope that says something to you, because the thing I think you need to elect next month, is a person who's willing to listen, a person who's willing to actually talk to those both sides, and consider their opinions. I'm not going to stand here in front of you and tell you that I have all the answers to the questions that have been posed, because I don't. It takes groups of people, small groups of people, dedicated people, to come to compromise, to come to an acceptable answer in order for us to continue to move forward. What I think is needed is a focus on a couple of areas that will hopefully pull us together as a community, as opposed to what has been happening in the recent past is fractionalizing. And I think perhaps if we can solve the gate issue and look really hard at the financing and where the finances come from in our community, always remembering we are a community in which a resort exists, not a resort in which people live. I'm going to give back some of my time, but reserve the right, Mr. Moderator, to come back up. No, I'm not. Anything else you'd like to hear about my opinions, you can read. Or frankly, they're supposed to put up our phone numbers and our email addresses, or those who said are allowed that. You're more than welcome to call me or email me. And thank you for your time this afternoon. I really am impressed by the commitment of everybody who showed up here or on the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next candidate that's been randomly selected by a member of the audience is Mr. Richard Spear. Rich, if you could approach the podium, please. Rich is running for the ASPPPO and CSA Board of Directors. Rich.
Afternoon. When I first ran for CSA and ASPPPO 3 years ago, I knew absolutely nothing about the details of the covenants, the limitations, or the capabilities. But just to summarize a couple of things, I serve as treasurer of ASPPPO and have since it began. And to put it in context, ASPPPO is $130,000 a year worth of revenue, $130,000 a year worth of expenses. And during the past period of time, spent more than $100,000 on legal reviews of the covenants and issues associated with a conversation with the resort. What I learned in that period, and share some of those observations with you, whether you vote for me or not, is it is a much more complicated organization than you think it is. I think it is critical, underlined 3 times, that ASPPPO and CSA, ASPPPO members serve on the CSA board. We represent a majority of that board. And to suggest that any of the ASPPPO board members are representing any special interest is inappropriate and inaccurate. I ran as an independent. I'm not owned by the company. I'm not supported by Alliance or any other groups. And to the best of my knowledge, none of the existing ASPPPO board members that I've served with have had any kind of similar conflicts. I think it's important for all of you to understand, which I didn't fully appreciate, that CSA and Sea Pines is a work in progress. This is an organization, company that had been neglected for years and was embattled in lawsuits. We have a 50-year-old infrastructure that has not been invested in, and that will represent multi-millions of dollars over the next 5 to 10 years. And we can dance around it, we can moonwalk it, we can do whatever we want to, but that is the reality. And to have delusions about what we can do with $130,000 a year and $500,000, by the way, in reserves. Without that $500,000 in reserves, we could not have mounted the legal reviews that we did as a part of representing you as property owners. But it's a work in progress. I think the staff that you saw take care of the hurricane reflect that. That came from the board before I joined it. Brett Martin, the staff you see that pulled this off, they were hired, all new. I'm not sure there's anybody that's not new under 3 years or 4 years. That is the result of the previous board. That's, where are they? That's Steve from the resort. That's Mark. And Charlie's here? Charlie's here too. And I listen to people belittle what they've accomplished and the thousands and thousands of hours they put in, and it's wrong. It's reflective of the environment we live in today and the national level, and it is divisive if you heard other people say. A couple of observations. The resort came in conversation with us about the hotel expansion for one reason only. It has nothing to do with covenants. It has to do with a document called the Hotel Settlement Agreement. And among all the wonderful things that were done by Charles Frazier, one of those was not that he unilaterally decided to expand the inn. And as a result, ASPPPO sued him. ASPPPO and others sued him. I should be careful in my choice of words here. And as a result, there was a court agreement. It is not a covenant, it is a court settlement agreement. And that requires them to obtain approval from ASPPPO for any expansion of the hotel rooms at the inn. But having said that, the resort could do the expansion without coming to us at all. If I haven't made myself clear, at all. They own the tennis courts. They own Lawton Stables. We don't. We may want to negotiate with them about those things, but they are not our assets. With all due respect for the pool, for the tennis courts, for the rest, they're not ours. We would like them to be ours. We don't like right of first refusal. Well, that was an asset that was sold and legally bound in covenants long before Riverstone ever showed up. And I think the negotiation and the referendum, and I was one of the 3 people involved with that, was a fair and reasonable process that was gone, and it was the best that we could reasonably accomplish. Having said that, there are a few things I'd like to make as observations about it. I thought when I read the covenants the first time, the 1% assessment for the company was very clear. As I got into the details of it, for years they have been paying the 0.5%. From my perspective, when they stopped mowing the grass and stopped doing the security stuff, that was when they should have kicked to 1%. I can tell you that legal opinions say that that's not necessarily totally clear. So we negotiated a 0.75 with the resort. The $1 million that was offered in the referendum was a result of an independent commercial appraisal of the development rights. And they said it was worth $1 million to $1.5 million, hence the $1 million. I'm down to a minute, so I'm going to have to be quicker. ASPPPO has resources right now of about $400,000 in investments. Over the next several years, whether it's 70% or 60% participating, we need to return that to around $400,000 or $500,000, because without financial wherewithal, we are not able to sustain any kind of independent negotiation with deep-pocketed resorts. Any case, she's got my 30-second clock, so I'll stop. I think the group that preceded me did an outstanding job in starting something that hadn't been fixed for a long, long time. I think the current directors continue to do that. And I think while all of us have issues, what was proposed was the best of what was reasonably to be done. And I think it's important for all of you to understand that they can do most of what they want to do right now without any additional conversations with us.
Your time has
Thank
elapsed. Thank you so much, Rich Spear. Our next candidate that's been randomly selected by a member of the audience is Mr. Mark Piegza. Mark, can you approach the podium, please? Mark is running for the ASPPPO and CSA Board of Directors. Mark?
Thank you again, Amanda. We were all, as candidates, presented with a group of questions from fellow property owners. I think we all addressed those. They're all on the website among 6 different main topics. So I wanted to talk about something a little different than those 6 topics today, since you can find all that information on the website. So I wanted to talk for a few minutes about the history and importance of tennis to Sea Pines. As I mentioned during my bio, one of the main attractions of Sea Pines to us as a family was the Smith Stearns Tennis Academy. We looked at numerous tennis academies in several different states before finding Smith Stearns. We ultimately fell for the combination of the quality of the academy, coupled with the wonderful natural beauty and sense of community here in Sea Pines. Our family is not alone. We know of numerous other families who have made that same decision. What I didn't realize when we first decided to visit Sea Pines was the rich legacy of tennis as part of the community here. I knew of the history of the Family Circle Cup, which was one of the premier events on the Women's Pro Circuit calendar. However, the history of tennis here at Sea Pines is much, much deeper than that. It really started with Charles Fraser's recognition that tennis was booming in popularity in the late 60s and early 70s. Charles hired Stan Smith, who was #1 in the world at the time, as the touring professional in 1971. Charles's goal was to attract tennis tournaments, much like the Heritage Golf Tournament, which he had started in 1968. Charles's vision came to fruition almost immediately. The CBS Tennis Classic was held here from 1971 to 1973 and was won by both Rod Laver and Ken Rosewall, two of the game's all-time greats. The Family Circle Cup started in Sea Pines in 1973 and was here until 2000. It was considered the 5th most important event on the Women's Pro Circuit calendar after the 4 Grand Slams. Some of the best women professionals of their eras won the tournament, including Chris Evert, Martina Navratilova, Steffi Graf, Tracy Austin, Gabby Sabatini, and Martina Hingis. The World Invitational Tennis Classic was held here from 1975 to 1977. It featured 4 of the best men's tennis players and 4 of the best women players playing singles, doubles, and mixed doubles. Stan Smith, Rod Laver, Bjorn Borg, Arthur Ashe, Billy Nastasi, Chris Evert, and Billie Jean King were among the luminaries who competed in this event. In the 80s, Sea Pines hosted the DuPont All-American Tennis Championships, held the week after the US Open and featuring the top 8 American men. Lastly, the Corel Senior Tennis Championships was held here for 3 years, from 1993 to 1995. This event featured 8 players, along with a fantasy weekend for non-professionals. Jimmy Connors won all 3 events, defeating Bjorn Borg in the last final. Sea Pines has had more nationally televised professional tennis events than any resort in the United States. Sea Pines has also been known as a great tennis destination for those of us who are non-professionals. On multiple occasions, we've been voted one of the top 10 best tennis destinations by Tennis Magazine, even reaching #1 on several occasions. The popularity of Sea Pines as a tennis destination, both for professionals and amateurs, has attracted many visitors to our community, my family included. Many of us end up falling in love with the community and decide to live here, and I think that accrues to all of our benefits as property owners. Therefore, I think I can say with confidence that tennis has had a significant role in building the community that we all enjoy here today in Sea Pines. I thank you all for your time today, and I look forward to the process and to entertaining additional questions after the forum, and I would appreciate your consideration next month. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Our next candidate that's been randomly selected is Bill Johnson. Bill, if you could approach the podium. Bill is running for the ASPPPO and CSA Board of Directors. Bill?
As I look around the room, I see a lot of the familiar faces that regularly attend these meetings. And for those of you that have attended these, you know how much division there has been in our community. And I would like to say it's time to put common sense to work and bring all of the stakeholders together in a civilized manner to move us forward. When you look around Sea Pines, we have a way of bringing up the negatives, but there are a lot of things we should be very proud of. And our current boards can take a lot of the credit for the many wonderful benefits that all residents of Sea Pines enjoy. They've been working diligent hours without any pay. They share one common denominator, though. They love our community. And that's a passion I share also. When I said I would be your best candidate, well, what qualifies me uniquely to make that statement? I've committed in these past 2 years to serve you by serving on the marketing committee, the gate entry committee. I co-chaired the gate fee task force. I co-chaired the short-term rental committee. I serve on the long-range strategic planning committee and chaired the transportation task force. In addition, I'm on the communications committee. I'm also the president of my regime in Harbortown and have been on this board for 10 years. Schooner Court. We've invested in Schooner over the past several years, hundreds of thousands of dollars in capital improvements, and if you actually include villa enhancements, it goes into the millions of dollars. So through my volunteer efforts, I've gained a thorough understanding of how governing organizations work along with the restrictions that we're under with the extensive set of covenants. I'm a full-time resident. A part-time resident cannot effectively contribute to running an $11 million operation. It demands full-time attention. You're not asking for a board that gives you a contribution. You're asking for a board that's going to give you a 100% commitment. I said I had not sought the endorsement of the alliance. This alliance, if not all of their directors and many of their candidates that they endorse, they're not full-time residents. It's an alliance that's chastised the efforts of the resort referendum. They chastise the negotiating team, but they're endorsing the candidate that sat at the negotiating table for all these years. And it's an alliance that uses scare tactics and threatening litigation in their communications. If you look around Sea Pines, our open natural spaces, our stakeholders have an obligation to work cohesively to ensure our natural habitats, and that makes certain they're not disrupted through poorly planned development. For the interest of all and the future of next generations, we've got to protect this exceptional place that we all live in. The forest preserve, the beaches, Heritage Farm, the stables. And if elected, I will do everything in my power to work with the stakeholders to ensure the preservation of these resources. We all realize that to have these resources and to maintain them and enhance them, it's going to take additional funding. Well, where's the money coming from? All the stakeholders must contribute. Our current annual assessment is one of the lowest on the island. We're the only plantation that doesn't have a real estate transfer fee. There are many sources of revenue that need to be explored to provide adequate funding, including the gate fee, the commercial resort contributions, but consider this observation. The residential community consists of 5,890 properties with an estimated value of somewhere around $5 billion. The total combined resort commercial value was only $500 million. Since 1971, the overall percentage contribution from the residential community has gone down dramatically. So let's not go totally overboard in thinking that there's a huge inequity in the contribution pie. As it relates to the gate, we all live with that frustration. Alleviating the congestion isn't going to be a simple one, stop to fix. New technology to allow digital access, adding a third lane, more aggressive signage. These are all things that we've looked at, and they have to be considered going forward. But first, I believe we need to increase the gate fee to $10. Both boards supported that. The resort supported it. However, the owners of Sea Pine Center have to approve this increase. Ongoing conversations have taken place, but there's still, to date, no resolution. I believe we should consider mandating our daily visitors to park in one of our utility easement lots. Take advantage of our trolleys, let them transport them to their destinations. This would take several hundred cars off of our roads daily. That would tremendously ease some of our congestion. We've all seen how social media has changed the way we received our news and our information. I recently read that over 60% depend on Facebook for our news. Unfortunately, there's no oversight. So when you're looking for news about Sea Pines, you've got to go to the only reliable source, and that's seapinesliving.com. The investments that the resort has made have been phenomenal. They've been exemplary. There's no reason to believe that they're not going to continue.
Your time has elapsed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Our next candidate that has been randomly selected by a member of the audience is Carrie DeVadelet. Carrie, would you please approach the podium? Carrie is running for the CSA Board of Directors. Carrie.
Thank you. I wanted to get to yes. Several months back, I was invited and volunteered to serve on an ad hoc committee I nicknamed Find a Way to Yes. It was a group of diverse and opposing opinions. Ted Lovett actually organized the group and included longtime resident David Perdue and others including Beth Kaufman, Larry Gunn, Sharon Lowe, Nancy Hellman, and myself. After multiple conference calls, we distilled a long list of issues down to a handful of recommendations that we provided to the resort. Why am I sharing this with you? Because I want you to know that I would like to find a way to yes, and I truly believe that we can. The improvements that Riverstone has made to date have been fantastic. I don't think anyone would deny that. Are they perfect partners? Well, no. They've been displaying some naughty behavior when it comes to items such as not paying their full annual assessment and some of the abuses for gate policies. But overall, we're fortunate to have them as partners, and I truly believe that. But they are fortunate to have over 5,800 residents within Sea Pines that also invest millions of dollars in their homes and in their community, for which the commercial and the resort benefit tremendously. So no doubt Riverstone Group is a group of very sharp individuals. But they recognized that the property owners were lacking the details that they felt necessary in order to make an informed decision. So they made the decision to take a time out, and hopefully they'll come back to us with more detail and give us that opportunity to make that informed decision. So in the interim, what's next? What can we do to address what is within our control? With the remainder of my time, I'd like to discuss 6 items: revenue and revenue leakage, governance changes, the need for minimal overlap between the ASPPPO and CSA boards, proper property owner quality of life and peaceful enjoyment, including gate policy and access control, along with the preservation of Lawton Stables and Heritage Farm, increasing transparency and enhancing communications by launching the ASPPO website that's already been developed, which I hope would provide for a place for interactive exchanges between the homeowner members as well as the elected directors, and be viewable by all. So let's leave Facebook for the fun stuff. 5, right of repurchase or first refusal, and 6, rewriting the covenants. Unfortunately, 6 minutes, much less 6 hours, is not sufficient time to cover all of these items. So I'm going to focus on revenues and specifically revenue leakage. So the $64,000 question is, what is the compelling event that drove both the ASPPO and CSA boards to vote in favor of a referendum that many felt was a bad deal for homeowners? The answer, I believe, is revenue, or the lack therefore of. Mr. Tucker mentioned during the May 30th meeting that the Pittman hydrology study revealed that we'll need to spend up to $1.6 million a year over the next 10 years on stormwater infrastructure replacement. Since there's no discretionary money in the budget, the $1 million the resort was offering, along with a 0.25% increase in their annual assessment, could be used that year or this coming year to reduce the $1.6 million to $550,000 in 2018. In 2019 and going forward, though, we need a new source of revenue to cover that expense, and I believe that's why the real estate transfer tax option is now being socialized. Currently, the resort orders free passes for weekly renters of private residences managed by the resort. They're not lodging guests. Last year, there were 36,849 such passes issued. Had the resort paid or collected the $15 fee, either from the property owner or from the renter, it would have added $552,000 of revenue to the CSA budget in 2016. Add to that the underpayment of their annual assessment, which is $224,000, the resort would have paid an additional $776,000 into CSA coffers, for a total annual contribution of $1 million. For more details, please reference the charts and graphs that I included in my responses to the 61 questions. Next, the $6 daily pass. Let's rename the daily pass to the Sea Pines Center Pass and leave it at the current $6 rate. The pass would be restricted to parking only at the Sea Pines Center, with no material change to the ability for an individual to purchase a $6 pass to visit the center. We've honored the covenants and freed the gate committee to create a new gate fee. I'll call it the Run of Sea Pines for $10 a day. These passes could be used to park at the trolley lot, Harbor Town, wherever it's legally permissible to park. If needed, we could add Sea Pines parking monitors at all these commercial locations to make sure that people are parked there that have the proper authorization. In 2016, there were 450,000 daily gate passes sold. Using a conservative estimate of 2/3 of these passes purchased going forward, we purchased with the Sea Pines daily run pass, that would increase our revenue by $1.5 million, from 2.4 to 3.9. So collectively, between the $750,000 and the $150,000, there's $225,000 of net new revenue.
Your time has elapsed.
Thank you, and I appreciate your support.
Thank you, Kerry. Our next candidate that's been randomly selected by a member of the audience is Mr. Christopher Cliff. Christopher, if you could approach the podium. Christopher is running for the ASPPPO Board of Directors. Christopher.
I would like to talk about enhancing ASPPPO, touch upon governance, keeping the plantation fit for purpose, and then 2 other issues at the end. ASPPPO, in each of the last 2 years, has lost approximately 200 members. It currently is about 3,280, which is less than 65% of its target. ASPPPO should be more visible if it wants to both reverse the decline in membership and for property owners to embrace ASPPPO as a representative of choice. In the 21st century, openness and transparency in public life is essential. If you don't practice it, you'll be distrusted. For property owners to participate in the big decisions, we need more information and earlier in the process. This wonderful booklet, Experience Sea Pines, describes the plantation as a residential resort. It comprises 4 groups: residential property owners, the resort, commercial entities, and the new kid on the block, CSA. In 30 years, CSA has grown in stature, while property owner representation has grown weaker. ASPPPO has lost its identity. You don't know whether your neighbour is a member, and I've learned that quite often they don't know either. Many have told me that they don't get anything from ASPPPO. But if you look at the Sea Pines Country Club directory or the Sea Pines Men's Club directory, you can find comprehensive details of members, including email addresses and telephone numbers. Not ASPPPO. It doesn't even have a directory. ASPPPO, we don't have a membership number. We don't even get a receipt when we pay. If you want to discuss a plantation issue, the chances are you'll choose Ted Levitt's Facebook page. I'd like to talk about governance. The covenants and various agreements are very clear. The power in the plantation is basically a balance between property owners and the resort, not CSA. ASPPPO should be seen to be separate from CSA, but through its presence on the board of CSA, strong in its determination and control of CSA. However, the excessive overlap between the ASPPPO and the CSA boards not only reduces checks and balances, but it encourages the impression that CSA governs the plantation. We should begin a review process. We should not be electing an individual in this election to 2 boards. I'd like to turn to keeping the plantation fit for purpose. In my opinion, there are 5 steps that need to be completed before any increase in property owners' assessment. Firstly, disclosure and thorough analysis of CSA current and planned expenditure. It should be open to challenge and prioritization. Secondly, apply the gate entry fee more fairly. Let's reduce the long list of exemptions. Thirdly, the resort should pay a 1% assessment. Neither the resort nor the previous owner have paid any assessment as services in kind for many years. Increase other commercials assessments. For example, South Beach Village pays approximately $26,000 per year, but gets back from CSA $16,000. Nearly said pounds. Fifthly, I believe we need to resolve the gate entry fee controversy. Sea Pines Centre claims it has a veto. There's 2 other issues I'd like to mention. In 1988, Sea Pines Associates, that group of 25, pulled off a brilliant deal. Out of the Sea Pines Company bankruptcy, they acquired resort assets and offloaded to property owners the main responsibility to provide and to fund community services. However, they kept control of the plantation. How? Number 1, the right to veto referenda, and number 2, the right to veto a property owner's choice of buyer. These rights are now claimed by the resort. We should search for new agreements on these issues. I've been told by numerous people in the plantation that round here it usually takes litigation to change. My background is negotiation, but I recognize that time waits for no one. Thank you. I'd like to say, at this critical time in our history, whatever your choice, please use your vote. Thank you.
Your time has elapsed. Thank you, Christopher. The next candidate that's been randomly selected by a member of our audience is Mr. Stu Rodman. Stu, if you could approach the podium, please. Stu is running for the CSA Board of Directors.
As a fiduciary and somebody who's really been in finance most of my career, I tend to take that view as we go forward. Referendum. The issues are pretty well defined. I think the negotiating teams are in place, and hopefully they're going to come forward with something for us in the next couple of months. And we got to move from having an adversarial relationship to both of them getting on the same side of the table and saying we got to be partners, because we got to get 3 out of 4 people that live here in order to vote for this thing to get it done. There's something in it for everybody. There's a lot in it for everybody. And shame on all of us if we don't get that done. I think if Charles was here, if I read what Charles might have said relative to the covenants, he really launched us on a path that's worked pretty well for a long period of time. But he was smart enough to recognize that there would be some changes that are required in the future. But putting in place a high hurdle to make those changes, it really says we want to be very careful about what we change. But when we do change it, it's got to be something that most people agree with. And if you can get to 75, you're at 90 or 95% for all practical purposes. Mentioned the airport earlier. I'm very focused on property values. This is a great place to live, but our property values are not keeping up with the recovery that's happening nationally, and I think we're falling behind what I would term to be our competitors. Now, as the airport comes on, it's going to do a couple of good things. We're going to see more people that want to live here and work elsewhere. We're going to see upscale tourism come, people that want to fly into wherever they're going to be. And supply and demand works, so that's going to impact favorably our property values. The other thing that I hope happens is that we will see ourselves emerge, this is from the resort side, but it benefits all of us, become perhaps the leading corporate hospitality place in the southeastern United States. It's under the radar. Most people don't know that's happening, but senior executives, large corporations, they want to be able to fly in, have privacy, but be in a place like Sea Pines that has all the amenities that offer them to be there for the kind of work that they need to do and to recreate. I think we got to get our financial house in order. It's very clear to me that the CSA board is struggling and has a good handle on the fact that we have a great deal of deferred maintenance that needs to be done. And so we need to get on with that. They understand what it is. They know what it is. But we don't have enough revenue to handle that. So there's a lot of possibilities that they're looking at. Gate fee, transfer tax, assessment, whatever it is. But if we don't do some combination of those, then we're just going to we're going to look kind of shabby, frankly. And we just need to do that. And I think what the board needs to do, and they're going to do this, I'm not saying they're not doing it, is to come forward and say, look, these are the real needs that we have as a community. Here are the revenue sources that we have. Here's what we think are the ways to meet those revenues that are needed. And then put it back to us, which they have to do anyway, in order to say, citizens, residents, members, the community, This is what we recommend that needs doing for these various reasons. And I think when that's done, I think we all have to step up to it. If it costs us a couple $100s a year to do the maintenance that's needed, you know, so be it. Not doing it has a very high cost. I think Charles would say that's exactly what I intended to do, is that when you get to that point, you come back to the citizens, you have to meet that 75%. I've been an investor most of my life, and I actually look at the biggest opportunity that we have for property values is investment. Think outside the box for a minute. Imagine if we were to, along in combination with resorts, to buy the gallery of stores or whatever it is out by the gate, and we get a much better entry to where we are. We take the forest preserve. You know, it's 80% of the size of Central Park in New York. You know that that's a great part of New York. We ought to be spending money there to put in more trails to make it more attractive for us and for the people that are visiting with us. Maybe we buy the Sea Pine Center. Maybe that's a good place for a community center. The swimming pools, the tennis, I don't know. There's certainly deferred maintenance that we need to catch up on. But I ran some back of the envelope numbers, could be way off, but they're probably not too far off. If we added up some rough numbers, and then we said to ourselves, perhaps resorts will come in for a piece of that, then what we could potentially do is borrow that money, spend that money, and it's a very, very small percentage of our net worth in each of our residents. And the reason it works is because the whole plantation is worth $5 to $6 billion. Lastly, I would say on the gate, I've created what I think is the way to do it, which is a separate lane. It's on the website with the questions.
Your time has elapsed.
So take a look at that. I think it'll work. Thanks.
Thank you, Stu. Our last candidate will be Dana Avocott. Dana, if you could please approach the podium. Dana.
Last but not least, today you are here because you care about Sea Pines and our future. We are at a crossroads with many decisions to make regarding the direction of our community. You've heard a lot of different viewpoints today. ASPPPO is going to play a pivotal role in shaping that direction. I think every candidate, whether they got up here and were for or against something, talked about how unique Sea Pines is. That's something I wanted to say. When we lived abroad, I kept searching to find a Sea Pines in Europe, something with the natural beauty, the environmental aspects, and also the sophisticated amenities. I never found it, and we came back to Sea Pines for that reason. Sea Pines' natural beauty is due to the foresight and the planning of Charles Fraser. His green environmental design set the standard for coastal communities worldwide, and our green belts are laid out in such a way that we don't notice the density and the number of people that actually live here, and it was intended to be that way. And the resort and our commercial neighbors provide our sophisticated amenities that we enjoy. This is a delicate equilibrium that works together on many, many levels, and our decisions have to be based on making that all work together in the future. But one of the most important things we cannot ignore is our heritage and our green and environmental qualities. So on ASPPPO and on the board, I would urge everyone to take a very conservative conservationist view towards evaluating new plans for the future. I think that we are going to have change, and we should have change, but our plans should be evaluated in detail with architectural drawings, human impact and measurement, and evaluated rigorously. One of the reasons that I opposed the referendum was because that detail was missing, and because we were going to lose one of the most beautiful elements of our Greenbelt, Lawton Stables. And many of the people who are sitting up here on this panel would have voted to give Lawton Stables up, and you do need a change in the covenants to have the resort turn that into a usable tennis center. So That's important to know. The other thing that I really want to talk about here is our quality of life. We have seen so much an increase in visitors, overcrowding, a big change in the success of not only Hilton Head but Sea Pines. And if we want to be a five-star community, we've got to address that. This last year, well, in 2016, we had an increase of 35,000 gate passes sold. Then in this year, on top of that, we have an increase of 55,000. A lot of these folks come in here and just drive around. You know, we're a great place to see the low country and go out and have lunch at the Sea Shack. They're not productive guests. And many of these folks crash our beaches. They park in our parking lots. This summer, many of our villa regimes in South Beach had to hire private security to make sure that their parking lots and their pools were not used by these guests. This is not right. We have to raise our gate fee to capture some of the wear and tear that this is causing. And we also have to have much more stringent parking regulations about where our visitors go on a daily basis. They should be parking in commercial places and, you know, increasing or helping our economy, or they should be parking at, you know, with their friends who they're coming in to visit. So that is key to our quality of life. The second thing is managing our rentals. We have switched from being a community that was first more residential and then rental to a community that has more rentals than residents. And many of these people come in and abide by guidelines and are great guests, but the ones that aren't make themselves known and make the quality of life in Sea Pines in the summer diminish a bit. I proposed in one of my write-ups that we get rid of the weekly gate fee pass that people who rent their home pay for their guests and replace it with a rental medallion. Right now, Sea Pines Resort does not pay that gate fee, and this would make it, we'd be able to collect money across the board and get more revenue and take the burden off the people who rent elsewhere, not through the resort. We could base this medallion on car parking spaces or, I don't know, bedrooms. One last word on overcrowding and quality of life. The resort has requested 90 additional hotel rooms in Harbortown. I think this permission should be given provided the resort uses the 100-room allowance at the Plantation Club and transfer those rooms to the new site. I would ask them to relinquish the right to build a hotel on the Plantation Club site. I think that's an already congested area and we don't need more visitors. I wanted to say more about governance and finance, but I've run out of time. I do think quality of life, if we want to be a five-star community, is the most important issue that we're facing. And we have to make sure that we manage that. Let's keep the Sea Pines vision alive as we move forward. Thank you, and I look forward to serving you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dana. I will now welcome Barry Barth, our moderator, to the podium.
Amanda has a few follow-up and housekeeping issues, but I just want to thank Amanda, Sandra, Jean, and John, who sets up the room for us all the time, for handling all of the logistics of this. And I also want to thank you. I want to thank you for being here and being our neighbors. Thanks. Amanda?
Thank you, Barry. So I want to cover a few things related to the election process. Barry has done some thank yous, but I do want to extend a few more. Thank you to those who are in attendance today. Thank you to those for attending on the webinar. And thank you to those who will actually go back and watch this video later on. Thank you to Barry Barth, our moderator, to Beverly Serrell, our timekeeper, to the CSA and ASPPPO nominating committee, to the staff that assisted with this. And then finally, thank you to our candidates. You guys have put in a lot of time and effort, and we certainly do appreciate it. Related to our election process, just want to make sure that everybody's aware of the process. You can see it on the screen. For those who are joining via webinar, you also have a copy of this in your attachments link, so please feel free to look at this PowerPoint presentation. It will also be posted to our website, and this information is also available on our website as well. Both the CSA and ASPPPO ballots will be mailed on November 1st. That's next Wednesday. For CSA, each Sea Pines property owner in good standing will receive one CSA ballot per property owned, because that is based on your home ownership. For ASPPPO, your ballots are based on your membership in ASPPPO. So membership is voluntary in that organization. Therefore, only one ASPPPO ballot will be submitted in that mailer. Vote for up to a maximum of 3 candidates. Any ballot that is received that has more than 3 votes will be voided. Elliott Davis DeCasimo, our CPA, validates our election process. If elected, the candidates will serve a 3-year term beginning on January 1st, 2018, and their term will expire on December 31st, 2020. We ask that you return your ballots by December 1st, 2017, and those get sent to the CPA Elliott Davis DeCasimo. If you're in attendance in the meeting in person, you would have gotten one of these when you walked in the door. This is our candidate brochure. If you are joining via webinar, this was included in an attachments link. We also will be posting this on our website as well. This information is already previously posted, but it's in a little bit of a neater format. This is actually the candidate information, their biography, and why they wish to serve Sea Pines. So I encourage you guys to look through that, read through it. It has all 11 candidates' information included, and then the information that I've just briefed is also located here on the back panel. If you'd like to learn more about the candidates, you certainly are able to do so. This link down here, which is seapinesliving.com/elections, that is where we have the information posted for our candidates on our website that includes their profiles and some additional information. So we encourage you to check that out. The video that we are filming right now will be posted on our website by November 3rd. And additional information, like I mentioned, is available on our website at this link. So please make your vote count. Like I mentioned, the CSA and ASPPPO ballots will be mailed out next Wednesday, November 1st, and they are due back by December 1st, 2017. Please participate in this year's election, and we certainly appreciate your time. For those who are in the meeting at this point, I'd ask for one final round of applause for everybody that participated. Thank you so much. And for those that are in the meeting room, you may stand behind if you'd like to meet and greet with your candidates. This officially concludes our forum and we'll end our webinar. Thank you so much for joining. Have a great day.